So the first Sunday after the Feast of Christmas, we always celebrate the Feast of the Holy Family. And family truly is holy. It's an incredible gift. The more I experience life, whether it be through my own experiences or the experiences of others, the more I recognize the important role, how critical the role of family is in the life of the individual, in the life of the church, in the life of society. Of course, we've heard many times it takes a village to raise a child, but the village cannot take the place of the family. The role of loving fathers and mothers, siblings, and the institution of family is clearly threatened in our world in many ways. And what can we do to shore up the value of family in our world? It's not enough just to talk about it. It's not enough to throw money at it. As individuals, we cannot keep going our own way, doing our own thing, if we want family. If we want family, it requires living it, practicing it. Of course, it starts with the bond of marriage. There is a reason the union has been elevated to a sacrament in the church. And of course, one of the gifts of marriage, one of the goods of marriage, the church says, is children. And statistics have clearly shown us that a marriage, when a couple stays together from the beginning, statistically, the children are much better adjusted. There's a greater likelihood of them not living in poverty, a greater likelihood of them furthering their education, greater likelihood of their involvement in the church. And in marriage and within the family system, one clearly learns to love. Living within the context of marriage, living within the context of family, is really our school of spirituality. We can learn to love. We can learn to grow. We can learn to sacrifice. It provides an opportunity for all of us to do exactly that. And I'm sure my brother Pat would agree with me. The phrases that are critical within the family unit are please. Hopefully you hear these within your family context. Thank you. I'm sorry. Those are important phrases because as human beings, we're imperfect. As human beings, we need to be uplifted. We need to be supported. We need to thank one another. Of course, living in a healthy relationship necessarily involves sacrifice, and we only have to look at the scriptures to see this truth. We read in Paul's letter to the Colossians, clothe yourself with heartfelt mercy, with kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. That's a big one. That's a big one when you're dealing with kids. That's a big one when kids are dealing with their aging parents. It's a big one when we deal with siblings. We don't have to look far to see families striving to live out values that we've just heard about in the readings. Don't have to look far at all. We have several families in our own parish. I look at my own family and the sacrifices that my parents made in raising 7 children And there were many, many sacrifices. My mother was 45 years old when she had me. I'm grateful for the gift of the Catholic Church and its openness to life, right? I think of that reality now, and I cannot help but bow before my parents, that they would accept me and love me when they were 45 years old, another child among them. And of course, my mother would say, she'd always be very positive. She would say, "You kept us young." Yeah, she's able to dye her hair so the gray hair wasn't too prevalent. But I think that's really true, because as a result, they hung around with younger people in many ways, with my involvement in school and the like. You can see this love lived out in many, many different ways. You can see it in a mother and father of a teenager who may have done some pretty crazy stuff, but they still love him or her and are working hard to keep them on track. You can see it in children coming to visit their mother on a monthly basis because she's homebound. It's lived out by children who choose to come home and visit their parents with regularity. And when these sacrifices are made towards the other, that is love in action. Family doesn't happen without that love in action. That's love in the flesh. That is where the gospel is being lived out. That's our school of spirituality. Heaven and nature sings in their love, in their self-emptying. And it's not always easy to love, as Jesus clearly tells us, but we are called to that reality by him again and again and again. But when we do love within family, we get a real glimpse, I think, of the great love that our God has for us. The family has been referred to by a number of popes and various church documents as the, quote, domestic church, right? And it's a great phrase. Every family should be a little church. Every family should be a home church. And every time we gather together, like we are doing this evening for Eucharist, for Mass, we gather together all of the home churches to join a bigger family, reminding us who we are and who we are called to be as the family of God. Did you catch our second reading, how it began? It began with brothers and sisters. As people born into God's kingdom, we are nothing less than sons and daughters of God. We are brothers and sisters called to be the living body of Christ, to be food for one another, broken for our world. In reality, we are called to live in that spirit of love, each day, in the way that we treat our family members and beyond, because we are part of the family of God. I think one of the gifts of Eucharist is we gather together, and it's a reminder that we are part of a bigger family, and it calls us to live in that spirit of love outside of ourselves again and again and again.